All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive in. Today, we're looking at Palantir, a company that's been, well, honestly, it's been making waves and grabbing headlines, and not always for the same reasons.
Yeah, definitely a company that stirs up strong opinions, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to try to unpack some of that today, right? We're going to look at their, the whole picture. We've got analyst reports, we've got their financials, and we've even got some interesting comparisons to other big players like Oracle and Salesforce, which I'm curious to hear your take on. But before we get into all that, I think it'd be helpful to we'll just set the stage. What exactly is Palantir? What do they do?
Okay, so Palantir, they're not, your typical software company. They're really deep into the world of AI and data analysis. And they work with some pretty high-profile clients, let's just say that.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But so AI and data analysis, those are pretty broad terms, right? Can you give us a little more specific sense of, like, what kind of problems are they solving? What are they actually doing with all this data?
So basically, they're building software platforms that help organizations help them make sense of huge amounts of data. We're talking, really vast amounts of information. And they do this by identifying patterns, by finding connections, and ultimately by helping their clients make better decisions based on that data.
Okay, and those clients, as you alluded to, they're not just anyone, right? They've got a pretty specific niche.
Yeah, exactly. They tend to work with, mostly with government agencies, intelligence organizations, and large corporations that have really complex data needs.
So not exactly the kind of company you'd find advertising on social media or anything like that.
No, definitely not. Their work is often, it's often pretty secretive, and that's actually one of the things that makes them so interesting, and also a little bit controversial.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the controversy a bit later, but first I want to talk about the financials, because those are pretty eye-catching, to say the least. I mean,
Yeah.
24% annual revenue growth, a 38% cash margin. Those are some seriously impressive numbers.
Yeah, they're definitely doing something right, at least from a financial perspective, and it's not just the raw numbers, it's also how they're achieving that growth. They're actually quite disciplined with their spending, which is somewhat unusual for a company in this sector and at this stage of growth.
Yeah, I was struck by that as well when I was looking through their financials.
Mm.
It's not often you see a company growing this rapidly while also, keeping their expenses in check.
Right, exactly. And that's a really good sign. It suggests that they're not just, burning through cash to achieve this growth. They're actually building a sustainable business.
Okay, so that's the good news. But of course, there's always another side to the story, right?
Oh.
There's got to be some concerns, some reasons why people might be hesitant about Palantir. I mean, a company doesn't just, reach those kinds of numbers without taking on some risk. So what are some of the potential downsides here? What are some of the things that people are worried about?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are definitely some red flags, some things that investors should be aware of. And one of the biggest ones is their valuation. Their price to earnings ratio is, it's sky high,
Yeah.
to put it mildly. It's currently sitting at around 360, which is just an astronomical number, even in the often inflated world of tech stocks.
Yeah, I mean that's way higher than most of the big tech companies that we're used to seeing. So what does that actually mean? What does it tell us about Palantir and how investors are viewing them?
Well, basically, it means that investors they're betting very heavily on Palantir's future earnings potential. They're essentially pricing in an expectation that their profits will explode in the coming years to justify that valuation.
So it's a bit like betting on a rookie athlete with huge potential, but one who hasn't quite proven themselves in the big leagues yet. You're hoping that they'll become the next superstar, but it's a big gamble.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And while analysts do predict that this PE ratio will decline as Palantir grows and their earnings increase, it's still a significant concern. It raises the question: are we looking at a genuinely groundbreaking company with a bright future, or are we witnessing a classic case of market exuberance, potentially even a bubble forming?
Okay, so we've got these impressive financials and a growth trajectory that has some analysts, pretty excited. But we also have this potentially worrying PE ratio that suggests that investors might be getting a little ahead of themselves.
Yeah.
So where do you stand on all of this? Are you leaning more towards the giant in the making camp, or the bubble waiting to burst on, or is it somewhere in between?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I think both sides have valid points. It's a really fascinating dilemma. And one thing that's particularly interesting to me is that Palantir isn't just, burning through cash to achieve this growth. They're actually quite disciplined with their finances, which is somewhat unusual for a company in this sector, as we talked about.
Yeah, that really stood out to me as well. It's not often you see a company growing this rapidly while also, keeping their expenses in check. So could this financial discipline, could that be a sign that they are indeed built for long-term success, or is it just a temporary phase?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? It's hard to say for sure, but their revenue is climbing steadily while their expenses are growing at a much slower rate,
Hmm.
and this translates to increasing profitability, which is obviously a very positive sign.
And on top of that, they're sitting on a sizable cash reserve, almost $5 billion, with minimal debt. That's got to give them a lot of flexibility to maneuver and invest in future growth, when you say.
Absolutely. That kind of financial cushion can be a huge advantage, especially in a volatile market like we're seeing right now. It allows them to weather storms, to invest in research and development, and potentially even to make strategic acquisitions.
But of course, even with strong fundamentals, market sentiment can be incredibly fickle. We've seen time and time again how quickly things can change in the tech world. 1 minute you're the hottest company on the block, and the next you're yesterday's news.
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, and that's why the upcoming quarterly results, which are expected on February 3rd, those are going to be so crucial for Palantir. Those results are going to be scrutinized by investors and analysts alike. Everyone's going to be looking for any indication of whether the company can live up to the incredibly high expectations that are currently baked into its stock price.
So it sounds like those earnings numbers could be a real make or break moment for Palantir. Do you think they have what it takes to meet these sky high expectations, or are we headed for a potential market correction?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And honestly, it's really hard to say. I mean, what we're witnessing here is a classic clash between two different investment philosophies, growth versus value, and both sides have compelling arguments.
Can you break that down for us a bit? I know our listeners are familiar with the basics of investing, but I think it would be helpful to hear how these different philosophies, how they view a company like Palantir.
Okay, sure. So long-term investors, the ones who buy into Palantir's vision, who believe in the transformative power of their technology and their potential to become a dominant player in the data analytics space. Those investors might see the current situation as a buying opportunity. They're willing to accept the high valuation and the inherent risk because they believe that Palantir's long-term growth potential, that it justifies the price.
So they're essentially betting on the future, right? They're hoping that the company will grow into its valuation over time. But what about the value investors? How are they likely to view Palantir? Are they going to be as enthusiastic?
Well, value investors, they tend to be more cautious, more focused on a company's current financials, its tangible assets, and its proven track record of generating profits. They're less likely to be, swayed by hype or speculative growth projections. So they might look at Palantir's, sky high PE ratio and just see a company that's simply overvalued, regardless of its potential.
Yeah, and I imagine that famous Peter Lynch quote comes to mind: "Buy what you know."
Mm.
And with Palantir, it feels like we're dealing with a lot of unknowns. They're operating in a complex and rapidly evolving space, and their technology, while undeniably powerful, is still shrouded in a bit of mystery. Does that make you nervous at all?
It's definitely a valid concern. Peter Lynch's philosophy emphasizes the importance of understanding the businesses that you invest in, and with a company like Palantir, that can be challenging. I mean, their work is often secretive. Their contracts can be controversial, and their algorithms are largely opaque. This lack of transparency can make it difficult for even seasoned investors to fully grasp what they're actually investing in.
So it seems like Palantir presents a real dilemma for investors.
Hmm.
On the one hand, you have this incredibly intriguing company with impressive financials, a compelling growth story, and the potential to revolutionize how we use data.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have this extremely high valuation, a lack of transparency, and the ever present risk that the hype might not match reality.
Yeah, and that's precisely what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not just looking at numbers on a balance sheet. We're grappling with some fundamental questions about the future of technology,
Mhm.
the nature of investing, and even the role of data in society.
So what does all of this mean for our listener who might be considering adding Palantir to their portfolio? How do you weigh these competing forces and make an informed decision? What advice would you give them?
Well, as always, the first step is to do your own research, right?
Yeah.
Don't just rely on headlines or analyst ratings. Dive into Palantir's financial statements. Read their investor presentations. Explore different perspectives on their technology and their business practices. Try to gain as deep an understanding as you can of what this company is all about, both the good and the bad.
It sounds like investing in Palantir isn't for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
You really need to be comfortable with a certain level of risk and uncertainty.
That's definitely true. But for those who are willing to do the work to dig beneath the surface and grapple with the complexities of this company, Palantir presents a fascinating investment opportunity. Whether it turns out to be a giant or a bubble, well, that remains to be seen. But it's a story that's definitely worth following closely.
And speaking of following the story, those upcoming earnings results, I mean, they're going to be crucial, right? Do you think they have the potential to either validate the current optimism or trigger a sell-off?
Yeah, they absolutely could go either way. If Palantir beats expectations and shows continued strong growth, it could further fuel the bullish sentiment and send the stock price, even higher. But if they fall short, or if there are any hints of weakness in their guidance, it could spook investors and lead to a sharp decline. So yeah, February 3rd is going to be a big day for Palantir, that's for sure.
Okay, so it sounds like February 3rd is a key date to circle on the calendar. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. All right, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored Palantir's impressive financials, their sky high valuation, and the clashing perspectives on their future. We've also touched on the challenges of investing in a company that's both innovative and opaque, and we've highlighted the importance of doing your own research before making any decisions.
Yeah, it's been a good overview, and we've only just scratched the surface here. There's still so much more to explore about this fascinating company.
Absolutely. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to delve into some of the more nuanced aspects of Palantir's business, including their client base, their competitive landscape, and the potential risks and opportunities associated with their technology.
Sounds good. Should be interesting. Welcome back to our deep dive into Palantir. As we saw in part one, their financials are they're painting a pretty rosy picture, but that sky high valuation, it has some folks wondering if it's all built on a foundation of sand.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to figure out if this is a solid gold mine or a mirage in the desert. And one of the key pieces of that puzzle is understanding who Palantir's customers are, right? I mean, after all, a company is only as good as the clients it keeps.
Exactly. And Palantir's client base is actually one of the most, well, one of the most intriguing and perhaps controversial aspects of their business. They're not, they're not focused on the typical consumer market or even your average Fortune 500 company. Their primary customers are government agencies, intelligence organizations, and large corporations with really complex data needs.
So we're talking about the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Defense, that kind of clientele, right? Not exactly your everyday software users.
No, precisely. And this focus on government and intelligence work is one of the things that really sets Palantir apart from many other tech companies. It gives them access to massive data sets and unique problem sets that most other companies can only dream of.
Yeah, it also creates a bit of a mystique around them, wouldn't you say? It's almost like they're operating in this shadowy world of spies and secrets, which I imagine is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it probably helps them attract top talent and secure lucrative contracts. But on the other hand, it also invites scrutiny and raises questions about transparency and accountability.
It's a double-edged sword. There's no doubt about that, and it's one of the factors that makes Palantir such a polarizing company. Some people are drawn to that mystique and see it as a sign of their power and influence. Others are wary of it. They're questioning the ethics of profiting from government surveillance and intelligence operations. So it's a complex issue, and it's one that we'll probably be debating for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big one. But for now, I think let's focus on the business implications. How does this focus on government and intelligence clients? How does that impact Palantir's their growth prospects and their competitive landscape?
Well, in terms of growth, these government contracts can be incredibly lucrative. We're talking about multi-million, even multi-billion-dollar deals that can provide a significant boost to a company's revenue.
And it's probably a bit more stable revenue than relying on the whims of the consumer market, right? I mean, governments tend to be a bit more consistent with their spending, especially when it comes to national security.
Yeah, that's a good point. These government contracts, they often span multiple years, providing a level of predictability and stability that's pretty rare in the often volatile tech sector. But it's important to note that this reliance on government contracts, it also comes with its own set of risks.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about those risks. What are some of the potential downsides of being so heavily reliant on government clients?
Well, for starters, government budgets are always subject to change. A shift in political priorities or a tightening of the purse strings, that could lead to cuts in spending, which could have a direct impact on Palantir's revenue.
So it's not as stable as it might appear on the surface.
Right, exactly. There's always a level of uncertainty when you're dealing with government contracts. Another risk is the potential for regulatory hurdles or even legal challenges. As we've seen in recent years, there's growing concern about the use of data, particularly by government agencies.
And Palantir is right in the thick of that debate, right? Given the nature of their technology and their client base.
Yeah, absolutely. They're increasingly finding themselves under scrutiny from privacy advocates, from lawmakers, and even from some investors who are concerned about the ethical implications of their work, and this could lead to tighter regulations, to restrictions on the use of their technology, or even to legal battles that could damage their reputation and impact their bottom line.
So it's a high risk, high reward kind of situation. But what about the competitive landscape? Are there other companies out there, doing what Palantir does, or are they pretty much in a league of their own?
It's a complex landscape, that's for sure. And Palantir certainly faces competition. But their unique their unique focus on government and intelligence clients, combined with their sophisticated technology and their track record of success, it gives them a pretty strong position in the market.
So they're not just some fly by night operation. They've established themselves as a major player in this niche. But who are some of their main competitors? Are we talking about other tech giants like Google or Microsoft, or are there smaller, more specialized companies that are vying for these government contracts?
It's a mix of both, actually. On the one hand, you have large tech companies like Amazon, like Microsoft, like Google, all of whom have their own cloud computing platforms and data analytics capabilities that they can offer to government clients.
Yeah, those are some pretty formidable opponents. How does Palantir stack up against those giants?
Well, Palantir's argument is that they offer a more specialized and tailored solution,
Yeah.
specifically designed for the unique needs of government and intelligence agencies. They claim that their platform is better equipped to handle the complex data sets, the security requirements, and the specific workflows of these organizations.
So they're essentially positioning themselves as the experts, right? The go-to guys for government and intelligence work. And they're saying that the big tech companies they just don't get it. They don't understand the nuances of this particular market.
Yeah, that's pretty much their pitch, and they've had considerable success with that approach. But they also face competition from smaller, more specialized companies that are focused on specific niches within the government and intelligence market. So it's not just about competing with the big boys. It's also about fending off these smaller, more agile players.
So it sounds like Palantir needs to be constantly innovating and evolving to stay ahead of the curve. They can't rest on their laurels.
No, not at all. The tech world, it moves at lightning speed, and the government and intelligence landscape is no exception. So they need to be constantly pushing the boundaries, constantly looking for new ways to improve their technology and to stay ahead of their competitors.
Well, it's certainly a fascinating and complex landscape, and I think we've done a good job of laying out the key players, the competitive dynamics, and the potential risks and rewards associated with Palantir's focus on government and intelligence clients. But as we were talking about this, I've been struck by something, and that's the realization that Palantir is not just a tech company, right? It's almost like a hybrid of a tech company, a defense contractor, and an intelligence agency all rolled into one. They're operating in this unique space where the lines between technology, government, and national security, they're kind of blurred, and that makes them both incredibly powerful and potentially quite dangerous.
Yeah, that's a really insightful observation, and it gets to the heart of what makes Palantir such a compelling and controversial company. They're pushing the boundaries of what's possible with technology, but they're also raising some really profound questions about how that technology should be used and who should control it.
Yeah, it's a discussion that we as a society we need to be having, and I'm glad that we're able to explore it here on the deep dive. But before we wrap up this part of our conversation, I want to touch on one more aspect of Palantir's business that I found particularly interesting, and that's their focus on platform development, not just providing a service.
Yeah, and that's a crucial distinction. Palantir, they're not just selling a piece of software or a set of data analytics tools. They're building a platform and an ecosystem that they hope will become the foundation for how organizations manage and analyze their data in the future.
So it's more like they're creating an operating system for data
Yeah.
rather than just an app, right?
That's a great analogy, and it's a bold ambition. If they're successful, this platform approach could give them a significant competitive advantage, and potentially even lock in their customers for the long term.
But it's also a risky strategy, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
building a platform from scratch, that's a massive undertaking, and there's no guarantee of success.
It's a huge gamble. There's no doubt about that. But it's also a potentially game changing move. If Palantir can pull it off, it could position them as the dominant player in the data analytics space for years to come. So, it's high risk but also high reward.
Yeah, very, very high stakes.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating story, and I'm eager to see how it all unfolds. But I think we've reached a good stopping point for this part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have. And in the next part we'll shift our focus from Palantir's business model to the potential risks and opportunities associated with their technology, which I think will be a really, really interesting discussion.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So we'll see you back here for part 3 of our Palantir deep dive. Welcome back to the final part of our Palantir deep dive. So far we've dug into their financials, their kind of secretive client base and the competitive landscape they operate in. But now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the heart of it all, their technology.
Yeah, Palantir's tech is really where things get interesting. It's undeniably powerful. I mean, it's capable of sifting through mountains of data and uncovering connections that would be, impossible for humans to find on their own. But that power, it also raises some pretty important questions.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have technology, this potent you have to ask what could go wrong.
Mm.
I mean, we're talking about software that can predict crime, that can identify potential terrorists, even track the movement of goods and people across the globe. I mean, it's like something out of a science fiction film.
It's true. There's a definite sci-fi element to Palantir's work, but the fact is this technology is already being used in the real world with real consequences, and that's why it's so
crucial
to understand not just what it can do, but also the potential risks involved.
So let's talk about those risks. What are some of the concerns that people have raised about Palantir's technology?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is the potential for bias. Any AI system is only as good as the data it's trained on, and if that data reflects existing societal biases, those biases will be baked into the algorithms, and the system will perpetuate those inequalities.
So for example, if a law enforcement agency is using Palantir software to predict crime hotspots, and the data they feed into the system is skewed towards certain neighborhoods or demographics, the software might end up unfairly targeting those communities.
Exactly, and that's a very, very real concern, given that much of the data used by law enforcement agencies is historically biased. So there's a real risk that these systems could exacerbate existing inequalities and lead to unfair outcomes.
Right.
Yeah.
And another issue that comes to mind is privacy. I mean, we're living in an age of unprecedented data collection, and Palantir's technology is at the forefront of that trend. They're aggregating massive amounts of data from all sorts of sources, and that raises some serious questions about about who has access to that data, how it's being used, and what safeguards are in place to protect people's privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. The potential for misuse of this data is significant, and it's not just about it's not just about government surveillance, although that's certainly a major concern. It's also about the potential for corporations to use this data to manipulate consumers, to discriminate against certain groups, or even to stifle dissent.
It feels like we're entering uncharted territory here. We've never had access to this much data before, and we're still grappling with the ethical and societal implications of all of this. It's a bit unsettling to be honest.
It definitely is. It's definitely a time of great change and uncertainty. And as with any powerful technology, there are both risks. There are both risks and opportunities. The key is to proceed with caution, to have open and honest conversations about these issues, and to develop strong ethical frameworks and regulations to guide the development and use of this technology.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's also about the human choices we make.
Yeah.
About how we use it.
Precisely. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. The responsibility lies with us as individuals and as a society to ensure that this technology is used ethically and responsibly.
Yeah, those are wise words.
Yeah.
But let's not forget. I mean, we're here to talk about Palantir as an investment opportunity. So how do these risks and concerns, how do they factor into your assessment of the company?
That's a crucial question, and for some investors, these ethical concerns are a deal breaker. They simply don't want to be associated with a company that's involved in such controversial work, and that's a perfectly valid perspective.
But for others, the potential rewards, they might outweigh the risks. I mean, let's be honest. Palantir is operating in a space that's only going to become more important in the years to come. Data is the new oil, as they say, and Palantir is positioning itself to be a major player in that market.
That's true, and there's no doubt that they have the potential to generate significant profits. But for me, the question isn't just about whether they'll be successful, but also about what kind of success they'll achieve. Will they be a force for good in the world, using their technology to solve problems and improve people's lives, or will they become a symbol of unchecked corporate power and government overreach?
Yeah, I think that's a question that every investor needs to ask themselves before making a decision about Palantir. There's no easy answer, and it ultimately comes down to your own values and priorities.
Absolutely. There's no one size fits all answer here. Each investor needs to weigh the potential rewards against the potential risks, both financial and ethical, and make a decision that they're comfortable with.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. We've explored Palantir from all angles, their financials, their clients, their competitive landscape, and the power and potential risks of their technology. It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope our listeners have found it as insightful and thought provoking as I have.
It's been a pleasure joining you on this deep dive. Palantir is a truly unique company operating at the intersection of technology, government, and society. And And their story is only just beginning.
So as always, we encourage our listeners to continue exploring this topic, to do their own research, and to form their own opinions about this complex and intriguing company. And who knows, maybe in a few years we'll be back here doing another Palantir deep dive,
Yeah.
reflecting on how things have evolved, and what the future holds for this company that's both promising and potentially problematic.
That's a great idea. I'm sure there will be plenty more twists and turns in the Palantir saga, and we'll be here to help you navigate them.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Palantir. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep investing wisely.